Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spec podcast. I am Max, and today we have a really interesting story to share. I'm presenting this with my co-host Jordan at Spec. Hey, Jordan. We're
Howdy.
talking to Roman Nedielka, who is riding his Zero DSRX. And for those of you who don't know what that is, we'll explain. But basically, an electric motorcycle around the world. Right now, he's in Kazakhstan, and he is on his way through Asia, but he's going to also be coming through the US and really just all around the world. He's been in places like China, Indonesia, and we have a lot to learn from him. So I think it's going to be super interesting. But Jordan, I'll let you take the introduction from here.
Yeah, Roman, great to meet you. Great to meet my hero who is taking my favorite motorcycles around the world, and specifically the DSRX. I went to the launch last year, and that's when I first fell in love with it. And to hear your story is really impressive and epic. And so I guess I don't even know where to start. So maybe we can start with where you started. I guess Indonesia, right? Where you've been living for the past few years?
Yeah. Hey, hi, Max. Hi, Jordan. Everybody. No, it's awesome that you guys gave this opportunity. And then exactly. So I've been living for the last 6 years in Indonesia, and Indonesia is a very two-wheeler centric country. So there are 9 times more motorcycles than cars in Indonesia, and this is even more. This is similar across the whole Asia. So really, the mobility there is about two-wheelers. And myself, when I came there, I always was riding cars. Yeah, I lived in Middle East and Europe. We always had a nice big car where you put everything inside, and that is not really feasible in Jakarta because of the traffic. So that was the first time when I considered just to get a motorcycle to be able to move faster around, and just by sheer luck, I managed to get an electric one, and I just fell in love with it. It was just more agile, quiet, uh, because motorcycle can be charged from a normal power plug. There were no issues with sourcing the power for it. So I just really loved it, and then as I started to work and as a management consultant, I work with the clients. uh, I started to be more interested in the whole mobility topic. And mobility is very car centric globally, right? When we talk about electric mobility, so I realized that there is a need to put really more focus on two wheelers, because again, in Indonesia, if we talk about the potential, it's in two wheelers. So I
Yeah.
started to sort of promoting, and I just really became convinced just by my own experience riding these bikes in let's say interesting and sometimes challenging environment of Indonesia. I just realized that they're already really mature. This is not sort of an early adoption phase. This is really ready for mass adoption. So apart from, I started the e-mobility associations of Indonesia, so I started to be more involved. I work with the government, and then I just had this idea that it would be really awesome just to have this practical example of what is possible with these bikes. And already 3 years ago, I had the idea to ride electric motorbike around the world. It was zero because I've been riding zeros as well, so I was confident in their capabilities. But then COVID came, so basically, yeah, there was no route, nothing. So I waited 3 years. In those 3 years, I launched much better model, which I'm thankful now for, after pushing it through some tests in different environments. I don't know if the older model would make it. This one did so far. So I just needed to do a lot of preparation because I'm a Slovak national living in Indonesia. So I needed to get the bike from US, get it properly registered, get all the car nets and everything to be able to travel different countries around the world. So it took a bit of a preparation, but finally I departed in July, and yeah, I already went across the whole Asia. Now ready to enter Europe. Just need to do Azerbaijan, Turkey, but getting there.
Yeah, and you went through like China, and so you've experienced a couple different charging standards already, because of course the bike is equipped with a Type 2 charger, and then in China you had to use their standard, and you said you had success with an adapter of some sort.
Yeah, look, they say that one of the biggest achievement and marvels of human, effort and invention is the power grid, and it is true. Now, if you look, power is everywhere, and it's amazing. And the beauty of motorcycle is that the battery is small, So can be
Yeah.
charged from just the normal power plug. Doesn't need any extra charging infrastructure with higher power. So I've been charging by default. 80% of my charging is from a normal power plug. I go to the hotel in the evening, they're just plugging in the morning, I'm fully charged. But if I want to cover longer distance in a day, and if it's in a country which has a charging infrastructure, then I do it, and it varies. So in Asia, Europe is more type 2. So for example, Thailand, super advanced. Yeah, it was very easy, a lot of charging stations. So I would just charge there directly with my bike onboard charger without need for an adapter because it's type 2.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, when I was in China, which is a completely different GBT standard, I managed to get from Alibaba this adapter, and it worked. And, it's not, these things never someone did before. So also for me, I had I had limited trust in that. But as I plugged it in, it worked. Yeah, there was no big spark, fortunately, which would end my journey. It worked. So GBT worked. When I will go to US, then I will need an adapter for that plug. But I think the onboard charger is already so smart, and it's all about IT. These things, like they can communicate with these different standards and different chargers and
Yeah.
agree on sort of output and all of that. So it's amazing. It works exactly. These are the type of adapters which can be used. So they work.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask if you've seen or experienced the Long Way series, like with Ewan
Yeah.
McGregor and his
Yeah.
friend. So I wanted to ask, like, what was kind of some of the inspiration? Did you pick up any from those? Did you watch those series and be like, okay, I should do that, I should not do that? What was the planning process for this like?
Perfect. No, I saw it, of course, and it was a source of inspiration, maybe with a different twist. But for me, so I liked it. It's a great show. It's a great entertainment, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
So there is a need to create a drama and play in maybe in some beliefs people have and everything. So what I have picked up from that is exactly that I want to show that actually it's not that difficult. And there are never. I've been riding for years. Also now I've covered already like 16,000 kilometers. Never ever happened to me that I was not that I basically did not have enough power to get where I need to get to. I was never
Yeah.
getting to these 5%, 3% drama. I will make it or not, because that works for TV. It's great. It creates tension and attention. For me, I never had it because with the proper planning, it doesn't happen. So actually, my inspiration was to show that it's actually much easier. It's possible. It doesn't need any crew, any support around it, anything which these guys have. It's
Mhm.
just be one guy and a bike, and you can do it, and you can do it everywhere. Yeah, that's why I ride around the world. So, and I ride like now in Kazakhstan with places which have Kazakhstan has the size of Western Europe, but has 10 times less people. Basically, there are like sheer areas where there is nothing, and still it's okay. I could do the electric bike. So I've learned from that. Actually, I want to show my much more relatable, much more realistic, frankly, because you know how these shows work, and 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 that's it. So maybe my journey. Obviously, I don't have amazing video shots. I actually take all the pictures and videos myself, so it's limited visual pleasure, but definitely I picked it up. I think it was an inspiration in terms of doing something long, and I already wanted at the time to do around the world. I was just
Yeah.
waiting.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it portrayed electric motorcycle as still something which is not mature and has some flaws. What I do actually, I want to portray it very authentically. Yeah, that actually no, it's already quite good. It's even much better.
Yeah.
There is a herd of camels. I can come to them, a little bit to check out like how they are because I'm quiet. I'm not scaring anybody.
Yeah.
I can enjoy and be much more immersed when I'm riding through environments. Actually, I don't listen to music on my bike. I just because I can listen things like this one, checking out my bike. This was a funny one. Uh, this is my bike covered, and she was messing with the camel. Camels are huge, by the way. If you don't know, it's a really big animal if you are next to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's
Yeah, so anyone who's watching, we do this podcast both for our audio listeners, but also watching them. And visually, we have some aids that he has provided, and there's photos like him in the middle of nowhere. And I guess I wanted to ask the burning question that everyone asks: how far do you go on a charge? I mean, what do you feel comfortable with when you're planning the route out and looking at charge point to charge point?
yeah, that I have learned a lot. So more or less, I can do 300 kilometers on one charge. This is obviously subject to terrain, which I
Yeah,
knew. But in Kazakhstan, I learned it's subject to wind. Wind is a huge factor. It can take 20-30% of my range. Seriously, that first time it surprised me, but I was lucky a little bit.
yeah,
So I need to do some planning for a day at least. So I have some longer plan, and then I do a daily one at least. Again, I need to see if there was this 400-kilometer stretch, for example, in Kazakhstan, which I
yeah,
needed to cover. There was nothing. Only in the middle there was some spot, like look, some settlement. I hope they have electricity there or not. And then I need to study satellite images if there is going some power lines there, and they were. So okay, so I can do this hope. So I can do 300. I with a nice backwind to Almaty, I did like 330 on one charge.
yeah,
If the headwind is, I do 230. Yeah, it's tougher, so I need to really do boost charges, because I try to cover also those 300 at least in a day. If I was When I was in Thailand, I could do 500 because they have a good charging infrastructure with fast chargers, so I'll just plug on the way for lunch somewhere. uh, but that's more or less my daily minimum. I would say it's 300.
yeah.
If I'm fine, I do more.
And
Seems
how? Oh, go ahead,
so,
Max.
no, I just want to comment. That seems very reasonable range wise, honestly. Like in terms of being doable, and I like how you note that like unlike long way up, when things are not dramatized, like there you don't have to have drama. You've done your planning, logistical things you can control, and I am impressed too. Like even in remote places like the rural parts of Kazakhstan in Central Asia, where it is just largely low infrastructure, you're still able to find a way to make things work. Obviously, when you're in cities like Almaty, then I'm sure the infrastructure is just fine and not an issue. But I found it really interesting you mentioning that it's the wind that makes such a noticeable difference. I'm sure the stance on the bike too, to the extent you can control, because like everyone always thinks about like hills and elevation with electric vehicles, and you have regenerative braking and other kinds of things. And when you're in places like Kazakhstan, I imagine the route you're taking is pretty flat, so it's super interesting to just think about like if range is a concern, the thing you can control really is what, just the wind. You can't control that. Then you have the speed you go, and if you
Yeah,
go faster speed, I'm guessing your range is going to drop precipitously.
exactly. This was the moment when the wind surprised me, and I was lucky found this plug next to the road on the light pole. Because then when there is a strong headwind, what I can do is only well, I could catch a truck, but it's dangerous because in the truck's wind tunnel in a heavy wind is super turbulent. And they go fast, so I cannot go like it becomes dangerous. So the really only thing is crawling, which I did few times. But I do crawling mostly before I still have a buffer, but it's also because I never know where I come. Like on these maps, yeah, exactly. Like I had a destination which was supposed to be a city where I wanted to stay, so I still had around 15% energy buffer here in Kazakhstan. But I go there and there is no road, and the city is on the side from the main road, and there is a sort of some off-road. I really seriously was not convinced to go there because it looked like big city, so should not be road like that. So I made a huge circle. So I lost another maybe 20 kilometers, and I eventually came back to that off-road road, and I did it and got to the city. But if I didn't have that buffer, maybe I would have an issue. So what I'm saying is that even if there is a wind or terrain, I still need to leave some buffer for my destination, because I will need to figure out when I'm going to actually stay. Typically, it's already late, it's night. When I came to 2 a.m. in Laos to a city. It's okay because I knew that there are 10 hotels and I can a little bit explore. Whereas here in Kazakhstan, there is only one place, and if that place does not exist, or it's again here things are not that updated. You have maps, but it's not always accurate. So I need to have a bit of a backup for doing something else. But I never really ended up or sleeping on the road or not being able to charge overnight.
Yeah, and can we talk about the kind of the bike itself? So first of all, when did you first start trying to ride electric? Was that like an earlier Zero or any other companies?
Yeah, I had an FX. It was amazing. So I was in Jakarta. There are no electric bikes at the time. It's like 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And I
Yeah,
decided to get a bike because it's much easier to move around. You can get out of the bubble of a traffic. And my girlfriend, I just show her this picture, like look exactly on this website, like there are these electric bikes. I'm thinking of getting one. And she looks at it and she says, "Look, I don't know, but I think we have like this in our garage." And she worked in a media company, this FX, and I was like, "That is impossible. They are in the US. You cannot have it." So she was working in a company which was doing the shows, and Zero was doing a show, and there was some payment thing. So at the end, they gave bikes to the company, and they were selling them. So I got a FX for like in Indonesia for even some discount. So that was the first time I got an electric bike, and I just loved it. Again, as I said, it's so I never really was riding motorcycles before. So
yeah,
my first bike was electric,
really?
and
Wow.
yeah, and then I had to do a driving license and everything. And
Yeah,
I sit on this combustion bike, and I was like, "What is this? It's loud. You have to do all these things with clutch and gears and stuff."
yeah,
And really didn't make much sense to me, but I understand the perspective of people who been riding those bikes. They basically, it's really what are used to. It's the same thing like when you have manual and automatic transmission on a car.
yeah,
I've been riding automatic. When I go to manual, it doesn't make any sense. It's just in traffic, you just have to be changing gears, etc. And I think most of the population is now in consensus that automatic is better. So I think it's very similar to electric. Like, yeah, they still have this, if you have memories of the loud bike from your childhood or something and impressing with the sound and all the mechanics, I think it has charm.
yeah,
I get it, but from a pure practical point of view, which I had because my first bike was electric, uh, I don't find that charm in it. Yeah, I actually find charm more in again being more immersed in environment. So I had in China you have to have this agent to cross the border because China is very very complicated for
yeah,
crossing. So she helped me to get through the border, and then she need to get to her car. So and she's been doing this with bikers long time. So I said, hey, I give you a ride. Just hop back. So she sits back in my bike, and I just ride her to the car a few kilometers, and I stopped talking to her, and she's like, this is the first time I talk to somebody on a motorcycle.
it's
Because yeah.
yeah, it's super different, and I really like. I came from gas motorcycles, switched to electric, mostly because I started covering Zero, and I've ridden Livewire and the competitors, and I'm thrilled to see you doing this on a Zero. Partially because the long way up, famously they were starting with Zero, and then suddenly they mysteriously switched to Harley. Um,
Mm.
I don't know if that would have happened if the DSR X had been out, because the X has really be like, it's the new really awesome kind of flagship bike from Zero. It has really advanced traction control, unlike some of the earlier bikes. And Harley allegedly just kind of gave a lot of money, and that's why they picked Harley. Whereas I think Zero would have been a great choice, and I'm glad to see you using Zero in this case. But it is interesting that you came from not a gas bike, just jumping straight to electric, and you also started on the FX, which if Max goes back to the models, it's the lowest one on the list, and it's also super light. Scroll all the way down. Did you have the 3.6 or 7.2 kilowatt hour battery on this one?
Yeah, I had two batteries, and actually I
Yeah,
crossed Indonesia on that one. So I was the first, also that
really.
was my sort of a trial. And you know the range of this one, range is 100 kilometers, but
Yeah,
fortunately, unlike Kazakhstan, Java is the super dense populated island, so I could, yeah, there was no problem with charging. But I thought exactly, if I can be crossing on 100-kilometer range,
yeah.
I can be cross Indonesia, I can cross world on 300. So and it was not really a choice, it was just what was available. But I've been a little bit, yeah, testing with what was available. And this
But now
DSRX, what is really, yeah, exactly, it's, I think the huge, I mean, improvement is the reliability. Man,
it's a
I've driven in rainy season. I caught the rainy season because I was later to get
yeah.
all my administrative documents. So I caught the rainy season in South Asia. It was raining every day. I just could not to ride in the rain. So I was riding in the rain all day, and it
I
was
have a clip
okay.
of
The
that
ride was
too.
fine. It's fine. I went to desert where there is a lot of dust and heat. The only maintenance I did on this trip was my rear mirror was a little bit loose, so I needed a hex, and then adjusting the belt. I think the belt changes the sort of tensions based on humidity or something, so I
Yeah.
had to do it a few times. Other than that, nothing.
I
And we
want to
can
bring that up
actually,
because for people who aren't familiar, right, like the carbon belt drive is such an interesting alternative to a chain, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the electric powertrain in being a low worry item. I mean, here you have this picture on your Instagram. I believe this is in China, I'm assuming. But
you'll just switch
went.
screens.
Oh yeah, so people can see. But you went through, I'm sure, countless different elevations, different humidity and temperature conditions, and it sounds like the drivetrain and the performance has been pretty consistent throughout your journey.
Amazing, exactly. So initially, I even thought I need to be super gentle with the bike to make it happen because it's a long journey. Right? It's like 40,000 kilometers or something. So I'll be gentle. But then I was just going to these places where I just could not resist, and I just took it a little bit off road. I took it in the sand. It was just amazing. And the main worry is that the small rocks or something will get there and breaks the belt. It has not happened, yeah, like this one. There's a lot of dust and everything. It's what they did, they put an extra cover on the belt on the SRX, so the belt is more protected. And as I said, I was riding different terrains, and I carry a spare belt just in case. Fortunately, I didn't have to use it. All I need to do is just really make sure that the tension is right. it it,
Which
it,
is
it changed with the.
Yeah, it's impressive. And our colleague Kyle and Simon and a couple others took these across Montana, the widest state in the United States, but not the DSRX. It was the older DSR, which had the older belt. And it's interesting hearing this story and its real life application of Zero's new belt on the DSRX because it's newly reinforced and there are holes between each tooth on the belt so that if a rock gets in there,
Yeah.
the rock can fly out, which is a big deal on this bike because they've heard and seen a lot of people breaking belts. It's very common, and a lot of people who take these on hardcore adventures, like older bikes, like the FX or even the DSR, they would put chains on them because the chains were more reliable. But Zero remedied that with this new carbon reinforced belt on the DSRX with the holes in the sprockets, which is kind of brilliant. So that's cool to hear that yours has been flawless so far because I think that they broke a belt just crossing Montana, which is not even that hard to do.
No, exactly. I hear the sort of rocks like bouncing off the bike,
Yeah.
but they don't get there. Or if they do, yeah, I think this the whole is great design improvement. So far it's been okay.
Yeah. But no other maintenance. It just works, right?
Charging, that's it. And as I said,
And I
like
want
I'm
to get
either riding or charging.
I want to get back to that topic because just looking on your Instagram, people are asking like, and these may not be the most hardcore EV or bike specific enthusiasts, but like, do you bring a spare battery? How are you doing this? And I just want to ask about that, like towards where you're looking, obviously going in Europe and the US. Sounds like charging options are flexible, but like, how does it change your mentality when you are always thinking about that as your next stop? Because ideally, right, every one of your stops should be some kind of charger, and occasionally you're plugging into people's residential or business, like household outlets, and occasionally you have these kind of fast chargers. I assume this is in China too, where infrastructure is going to be more advanced for that kind of thing, using that GPT adapter. Um, like, have you, a lot of your journey has been through Asia so far, but like, have you seen a variety and experiences of like charging? Uh, does it seem like parts of the world have a long way to go in terms of like catching up to where we need to be if we're going to have EVs that can do this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's very diverse. So I would take one extreme, which is China, which is completely electrified. So in China, for example, in the cities, there cannot be a two-wheeler which is a combustion engine, only electric. All the scooters, motorcycles, everything is electric. It's amazing, and there is obviously widely available infrastructure. It just changes the dynamics of the city. It's more quiet. It's just great. And the other extreme would be, for example, Jakarta, as I said, which is a super noisy environment because all the bikes are non-electric. When it comes to charging, also I need to make a point. I'm not saying that, hey, I mean, now you should be touring on electric bike. That's not the point. It's still obviously you see what I do, right? It requires planning and then. What I'm saying is that look, and if you can do this, you don't need to be worried about using electric bike in a city or in your country where you need to go a couple hundred kilometers up and there. And if you have that infrastructure, then like in Thailand, for example, when I was in Thailand, people was not even surprised. They have already a lot of electric cars, uh, not that many two wheelers, but basically charging has become already a norm there. Yeah? People have built their behaviors around it. Companies have realized that there are business models around it. So it's all organically growing and more or less balancing the demand and supply for the charging. So that is
Hmm.
happening. I will see how is it in Europe and US. I obviously it's probably much more advanced in terms of the coverage, so that probably will be even easier. I think what is important for scooters, on the other hand, or motorcycles, is that also people should not think that they can charge only in the charging station. The home charging is the most convenient. I think there is a study where actually people prefer, if they have the home charger and they have a place to park their bike, it's actually much more convenient. You don't even need to go comparing to your bike with the gas powered bike. You don't even need to go to a gas station, which is inconvenience for some people. If you have it at home, just plugging it in, it also has this nice feeling of sort of control. It's cheaper. It's much cheaper than gas. So home charging, I think, is probably an interesting point which many people don't think about, because if people think about cars, then it's not so. It's a different story. For a bike, it's a default mode of charging. I mean,
Yeah,
when I was
it's
with my bike in Jakarta, 300 kilometers in Jakarta, you will you will not make even in a week in the traffic. So I would just bike charge it once a week.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting difference between the cars because like you said, the cars have a much bigger battery. And so home charging with a car is really it's mostly needed to have a 240, 220 volts higher voltage outlet to kind of level 2 charge it overnight. Whereas with the motorcycles, I charge my Zero on 110, 1.2 kilowatt. Overnight it's full even if I'm completely empty. And you're right, it does make it easy to go anywhere and think, well, I can probably find a little outlet somewhere. Whereas with a car, you have to be a bit more worried about finding an actual high enough power charger to make it worth your time. Because you can charge a car on a household outlet and it would just take a week or two. So the
Yeah.
bike makes it a much easier. And I mean, it's very, this whole adventure is very intriguing to me. I'm excited to see you continue it, we'll be following along. We'd love to have you back on the show to get more updates as you continue around the world. And of course, when you come through the United States, being in Colorado, we live right along the two main, cross-country routes. So you'll definitely have to come see us. I'd love to see your bike and maybe make some videos or something and show you our beautiful little land over here. But man, this makes me want to go everywhere else too.
Definitely. I don't have a specific route for US yet, so I'll build it around being able to meet you guys.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
We absolutely need to meet you, and I'm sure we've got to do more content on this, even for people watching this who are not familiar with the bikes. I feel like this is so telling about EV infrastructure, and I want to go back to one of the first things you said, Roman, that like the electricity grid by itself is a miracle, right? That it exists and works at all. And when you have a more efficient two-wheeled vehicle that doesn't need to charge as quickly, I mean, at a Spec here in the US, because we cover cars so much, we've been like broken records complaining about broken DC fast chargers and unreliable infrastructure, and these are growing pains. But the reality is we live in a developed country, and when you have a lower power application like this, I think the possibilities show that charging can be good. It already is good for bikes, and Kyle always says this with cars. Like when it comes to the products, EVs aren't the future, they're here. And you're pushing the absolute limit of what you can do on a bike, and it seems like you're having a great time still, obviously with preparation and knowledge. But I mean, if you can do this, yeah, people with their Zero or their Livewire or whatever their choices at home can absolutely cruise their local routes, get comfortable with it, and feel confident knowing that they can charge in a lot of places because they're not necessarily tethered to charge stations in that same mentality that people have always thought about with gas. You can always really just charge just about anywhere you can get electricity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's great to meet you, Roman. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And like I said, we will definitely have to do more episodes and learn more about the journey. And like I said, we'll be following along. Max, I don't remember if you want to read off the Instagram and or wherever you want to have people follow you and see your journey. Let them know. _round the world.
Yeah, so my Instagram is
link in the description, but people should check out your Instagram. I think that's where you're most active, but you have a YouTube channel too.
Yeah, I'm doing some videos. I shoot it, and I have some friends who are actually turning it into some videos. So that is as well on YouTube. We'll be covering the main blocks of countries I cross. So now I'm done with Kazakhstan. So I'm going now to Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, so Europe. But I think, quite frankly, the most challenging was this part of Asia, because Europe, as you said, Europe, US, there is even more charging infrastructure. So I consider it.
Yeah. Well, best of luck the rest of the way, and we'll definitely have you back on soon.
Yeah, we have to have you on, Roman. Thanks so much for coming on. And, good luck on the rest of your journey. You made it through Central Asia, like you said. That's probably going to be the hardest and most remote part. But looking forward, nonetheless, to seeing what happens next, because you've still got a lot of way to go ahead of you. So it's all exciting stuff.
Awesome. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to showcase how mature and reliable the e-mobility on two-wheelers already is. Thank you.
Great. Well, see you soon, hopefully, and safe travels, Roman.
Yeah, see you. See you in the US. Bye.